Do you find that the decrease in effort and sacrifice, and we're looking at that value equation like from Hormozy, and having the one provider, do you find that that is one of those key elements that shine here?
Yeah. So it's a great question. And like, I think, the problem with there being so many specialists out there, PPC specialists, SEO specialists, Facebook specialists, the problem is your core strategy becomes disjointed, right? So we really have like a couple pillars that we operate on in the agency, I should say the whole ecosystem of our business. Number one is the proper budget allocation will win. The right amount of dollars spent in the right places for the right keywords with the right targeting strategy, like right strategy, check. Like, right, it doesn't require this ninja level execution where every granular detail is perfect. It just requires the right strategy and the right proportion of your budget going to the right places. So that's like the budget allocation / right strategy category. The second category, which leads to your point, is the centralization of points of contact, right? So what we're noticing for a small business owner or a law firm owner, like if you feel that you have to, let's say you change your law firm's marketing plan and then you have to communicate that change to 5 different vendors, right? What's the chance that every 5 of those people are A, going to even get your communication, or B, even listen to 50% of that change in strategy the same way as the other 4, right? Chances like 0, right? So you're basically signing yourself up for a disjointed strategy when you, now I think that there's a level to this, okay? If you're a $10 million law firm, like you probably do need a really high level Spidey specialist for just one piece of your marketing, right? That's where it shifts, right? But for 90% plus of law firms in the United States, they don't need a specialist for each section of the market. They need a central point of contact for their marketing. So I agree with you on that.
Yeah, and I see even in our space, I mean, to me, that's why Scorpion grew so quickly.
Yep.
Now, they were they got those credits from Google Ads back in the day. Mm-hmm. They were in, but it makes them appealing. Hey, you get a pretty website, we're going to handle all the digital, and you can be a lawyer type thing.
I think the hard point on that, though, I just want to add to that, like the hard point about that is man with the hammer syndrome, right? And the man with the hammer syndrome, to a man with the hammer, every problem looks like a nail, right? So a social media specialist who builds their company around their specialty is going to become non-objective in their recommendations to clients, right? They're going to try to convince clients that they need to up their budget on their core competency, right? With a company like Scorpion, their core competency was website design. That was their core competency. They were the design company at one point. So they built their whole infrastructure around pretty websites that attorneys liked the look of, right? And then they built their everything else is a secondary service to that, right? So, and that happens in, I think, a lot of vendors, right? Unconsciously, you're biased by whatever your dominant skill set is. And I think the difficulty in being an innovator is detaching what your skill is from what the client needs, right? So sometimes your deepest skills form your deepest ruts, right? So I just think that taking that step back and always thinking, if you're an attorney, if you're another business owner listening to this, I think one of the highest value things is just detaching yourself from what you think your service is, and then asking yourself, what outcome is this end consumer giving me their credit card information for, right? And it's not the tactical bullet list of the stuff you're doing for them. It's usually something a lot different than the tactical bullet list of what you're doing,
Well, there's so much there, and I kind of want to shift it to that attorney's perspective, right? So it's, when they're looking at their firm and they're making these same types of decisions, right? And we'll laser in on the personal injury attorney, right? The one that's once motor vehicle accidents and slip and fall and all of this. So where does that play into in terms of positioning? You've got your individuals that go deep, like a Joe Freed on trucking, or you've got Papantonio on torts. How does that play into a focus compared to those back end and doing multiple things to solve the consumer problem, or maybe it's entirely different?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to look at this, right? If you kind of go into the deep secret society of the PI lawyers, right? You see a lot of innovative business models that are kind of like, I don't know why. It seems like so many PI lawyers are so tight-lipped. I don't know why. It's just a lot of PI lawyers I meet are just like not open about their stuff. To each their own. I think the owning of like MRI centers, the collaboration with obviously doctors, chiropractors, and then that's more of a back end referral / business model element. On a front end, when you're talking about offer creation for a personal injury lawyer, what we've seen works the best. I mean, we help lawyers as part of our coaching program. We help them form sales scripts. We help them identify, it's the traditional consulting sales script that we've augmented for a law firm, right? Where you identify the dominant buying motive, you do conversational fact finding, you have them say they can't solve it on their own. That whole conversational needs analysis based script, right? Urgency based decision making at the end with an incentive on making a decision right now. We use all those principles when we coach law firms how to do that. And what we notice is that the things you're already doing just need to be repackaged, right? So don't call your phone line just, hey, you can call us whenever. Call it a personal injury hotline, right? Right? We're one of the only firms that has set up a personal injury hotline through your entirety of your case where you can call this number and XYZ will happen 24/7, 365. Now, how much work is it going to take for you to set up a separate phone line that has a slightly different deliverable than your general receptionist answering the phone? In the client's perception, they hear, oh, wow, this firm has something different than all the other PI firms, right? Another example is injury check-ins, treatment check-ins, right? So are you one of the only firms that's going to help maximize the value of their case through some proprietary methodology or process that you have that's going to help the potential new client stick to their treatment schedule, right? That's a huge problem in the personal injury world. And we as a law firm solved that. And here's how we solved that. And it's through the XYZ process that we invented. And we're one of the only firms in XYZ market who actually does the XYZ process. Why? Because we're the inventors of it, right? So throwing stuff like that into a sales script can take you from wherever your wanted case conversion rate is now and add a couple extra percentage points on it, right? Trickling this through, your intake team being trained, right, on what makes you unique, right? And so that they can circumvent objections before they come up during the sales process. We've seen that work so powerfully because most law firms are just measuring each other against experience and I'm going to fight for you and I'm aggressive. When you actually have a unique system to back up your law firm, holy crap, it's crazy how far that goes.
That's incredible, and I liked some of the words that you were using just naturally. So you were referring to them as a client and not a customer. A client is a person and has feelings. A customer is just a widget, it's a thing.
Yep.
And even just the words that we use play into this. And I think that all of this, a lot of times, these PI, many of the PI attorneys, they'll go in and it becomes this commodity game where they're just throwing money against something and you don't have this multiplying impact with a good, memorable message.
Yep.
So take me to, we got a PI attorney. They're wanting to grow. They had a nice settlement recently. They want to invest. They want to get a mentor. What does an engagement look like for this individual to work with your firm? How do they? What's the initial process look like? If they want to get some coaching and go and work with your business.
Yeah. So I think the the most important thing is not that you received a settlement check, it's that you're committed to a bigger future, right? Because you are going to be, as an attorney, you're not going to fit in our program if you don't have growth goals, because we have 450 attorneys now working with us, and it's become like I get emails within a week if someone is like a bad apple. So just because you landed a settlement check, I would invite you to really ask yourself, do I want to scale my law firm? Do I want to turn this law firm into a business, or do I want it to be dependent on me and have this be a job for the rest of my life? And there's the majority of attorneys, I know it sounds crazy, the majority of attorneys have chosen the path where I'm going to have a job, I'm going to be like a highly paid sports athlete. You notice this in the trial world, right? All the trial lawyers, they chose to take the skill route, highly paid skill surgical specialist route where it's all dependent on them being great in the courtroom, right? And you can make millions of dollars a year taking that route and not building that big of a team around you, right? That's not our specialty. Our specialty is a law firm owner who wants to turn their legal production business into a self-running machine that runs itself, that eventually you hire a CEO or a COO to run. And I always call a business a commercial, profitable enterprise that runs without you. That's a business. A commercial, profitable enterprise that runs without you. So the core infrastructure of your law firm should be producing a profit for you, and it should take a very minimal input of your time. Therefore, the gateway for you to build that is just a couple leadership skills. Like, you're just 3 to 5 core leadership skills away from building that firm. So once you've made that commitment that, yes, I am going to scale my law firm, I'm going to fire myself from my current job role, then working with us looks like mainly booking a call with a member of our team and then them going through vetting out whether you're actually looking to grow your law firm. And then if it's a fit, our coaching program, before Andy and I merged, to get the marketing and management coaching that we offered was $80,000 a year. And now we offer our coaching program for under $40,000 a year. But our prices have gone up every 3 to 6 months since we launched it. So don't be surprised if by the time you listen to this, you're like, what? It's
more value. It's worth it. I think Michael Gerber would be standing up tall here, listening to what you're saying. The E-Myth Revisited and taking off those hats, because I think that a lot of attorneys
Michael Gerber offered for me to buy E-Myth for $40 million. I have the offer email in my inbox.
That's fun. That's amazing.
He offered me to buy his company. Talk about confidence.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think there's this confusion too. A lot of attorneys they're like, "Oh, I started my own company," but if you're still doing all the work, you're still wearing all those hats, and you're still the technician. You just bought yourself a high paying job, right? Where you're talking about moving away, and I think what's interesting here is so many CEOs are put on this pedestal as like superheroes, right? Your Bezos and Elon Musk's But, like, who's the real winner? Is it the chairman? Is it the owners? Because they're not talked about, right? Like, there's this big mystery around the Rothschilds and all of this. It's like, but there's these individuals that have truly ascended, but we're seeing the highest paid job owners with this wearing the CEO hat.
Yep. So here's an interesting way to look at this, right? I teach this in a piece of our program, and I call it the sports analogy. And when I ask people, like, what is the intention of a sports team? And most people answer, well, it's to win the championship. So if it's a football team, it's to win the Super Bowl, right? Well, if you look at the average cost or investment of buying a sports team, you realize pretty quickly that the goal of a sports team is to provide a positive return on investment to the owner of the sports team. Now, there's 2 metrics that will produce a positive ROI or have a likelihood for that. A is winning the Super Bowl or making far into the playoffs, and B is selling out the stadium. These 2 goals get delegated: A, the goal to win the Super Bowl, that goal gets delegated to a head coach or a GM, right? So actually the GM will own that goal. And then the vice president of marketing, right, or a chief marketing officer will be delegated the goal of selling out the stadium. Great. So now let's take the GM. GM now has to delegate the goal of winning the Super Bowl to the head coach. Delegates 3 numbers to the head coach, and that is you have to score an average of X points per game. You have to prevent the opposing defenses from scoring over Y points per game, and your average return on special teams should be X number of yards per return. Okay, great. Head coach takes those 3 KPIs, pushes those KPIs to an offensive coordinator, a defensive coordinator, and a special teams coordinator, right? Offensive coordinator then takes that to the quarterback's coach, to the running back coach, too. So the example here is, yes, the owner of the sports team is getting paid the most in this whole equation, right? Assuming the sports team is successful. They're building equity in this whole equation, but they're doing the least amount of work. And this is the hardest paradigm I noticed. It takes literally a year for attorneys to finally have the epiphany where they are the designer of their business, not necessarily the doer. And I hear so many stories, Chris, of attorneys who worked with amazing companies like you or me or other companies and get all these leads, and then they're like, holy crap, I hired these people, and then the firm imploded, and then we're just going to go back to being small again where I was doing everything myself. And the reason that you experience that is because the infrastructure of your team was not set up for scale. If you're doing drive-by delegations, like a drive-by shooting, right? Every delegation that you give to someone is, hey, could you just get it done by tomorrow, right? That's not an effective leadership system, right? So an effective leadership system starts with you being clear on your vision, like a sports team owner would be, and disseminating that vision all the way down like a funnel, right? And codifying it and putting that into a documented revenue plan and putting that to a documented set of quarterly boulders. I know you run on Traction, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
We have a law firm abbreviated version of that, right? Where we tie it into case valuation metrics and intake specific goals and stuff like that. The bottom line is this, like, you get paid for designing the funnel that I'm explaining here. You don't get paid for doing elements of the funnel. You get paid for 2 things, designing the funnel and deciding on the priorities of the funnel. Now, the hardest thing to do is to step back once you've made the decision and to let your team make mistakes. And you know this, you've scaled your team wildly, right? You have so many people that work with, with rankings, with all the freelancers and all the internal staff, and it is so hard to not step in and fix mistakes as they pop up. Why? Because your name's on the company, right? As a lawyer, most times your last name is included in the name of the law firm. So it's, if I make a mistake for a client, that means I am a terrible person, I'm a terrible human, I'm worthless, blah, blah, blah. Everyone's going to hate me. No, your business produced an outcome like a hot dog cart that produced a bad hot dog, right? And most lawyers end up with the comparative reaction of rolling up in the fetal position and going, I'm going to downsize like I did before, right? So that is the biggest epiphany shift. And I'm sorry to go down this tangent, but you just hit it on the head when you're talking about who really gets paid the most. And it's a complete dichotomy from where you've been spending your time versus where you making 10 times more should be spending your time.